You over there, I see you're brown. You're going to immigration detention. Do you think that that's legal detention?
Is it legal for a U.S. police officer to stop you on the road because they believe that you've been involved in a crime?
Bitch. Stop
Hey,
dodging.
motherfucker, let me tell you what.
I think it's disrespectful. Answer the question.
I'm explaining to you right now. Calling me a motherfucking bitch is the wrong thing to do, bro. I've been very civil with you.
I've been civil to you. You're dodging. You're dodging. You're dodging. I thought jokes were legal.
I give you 2 hours of my time, and you're gonna call me a bitch
because you're not answering the question. What, you're really gonna pussy out about that? First of all, the bitch is playful.
I'll tell you what, man.
Listen,
we're gonna go ahead and conclude this conversation at this point. I appreciate the opportunity.
Hey. He left the call. Hey, folks, please like, comment, and subscribe, and make sure to check out my newsletter. Information is in the description. So listen, I brought you on because we met at the Tim Pool event long ago. You are tiny, and we shook hands. You had, I thought, a very good question at the Tim Pool event, and so I just wanted to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself before we get into like what we're here to discuss.
Yeah, so there's not a whole lot of an introduction, man. I'm a knuckle dragon, blue collar, former fireman, worked in corrections, kind of had my hand in a little bit of everything throughout life. And that's pretty much it, man. I'm just a blue collar knuckle dragger, man.
No, appreciate that. You are not tiny, as the name would suggest. You're a rather large individual, but you were good humored. Yeah, you were good humored at the Tim Pool event. And I'll just remind people, his question was about the comparisons for the Kilmar Abrego Garcia case to the kind of outsourcing that, prisons do as a matter of course in the country. And I thought it was a very insightful question and one that I thought helped my case, but it's interesting nonetheless, no matter what side of the political spectrum you come from. So I appreciate that. Would you consider yourself a Trump supporter or MAGA supporter?
I'm an American First supporter, but before we continue on, I'd like to actually go back and kind of discuss that for a second, because there was a whole lot of conversation that took place that didn't actually address the question. So you concede and you understand, you agree that as Americans, we actually already sell our inmates, the wards of the state, to private prison industries, correct?
I agree. Not only do I concede,
okay.
I think it's problematic, the proven fact that America and the respective states outsource their responsibilities to hold prisoners to private entities, correct?
Correct. Now, my question to you is, who actually owns those private prisons?
I don't know the direct ownership of the prisons. I know it represents kind of a small percentage, actually, of the overall prison. The ownership of prisons in the country is largely owned by the state and owned
right.
But I don't actually know, as I sit here, who owns them.
Right. So, but you would be in agreement that they're privately owned, right? And so I can actually tell you, if you actually pull up who owns the private prison industry complex or industrial complex within the United States, however you want to label it, private prison industry, right? The people that own that are actually foreign investors by and large. Okay, it's not Americans that own it. So America, for quite a while, has already been selling our inmates to foreign interests. Okay, the problem with your entire argument and my issue with what took place, and we'll progress on. I don't mean to rehash everything, but just to kind of tie all this up, right? My issue is that you came out very bombastic about the fact that Trump was going to sell Americans to foreign countries. Well, guess what? We've been doing that under Obama. We did it during Biden. We've done it during every administration that I'm aware of that I've been alive for, and I'm 45 years old. And again, I've worked in the private prison, or not in the private prison industry. I actually worked as a corrections officer for Maryland and Kentucky. But I transported inmates back in the early 2000s back to private prisons that were owned within Kentucky by foreign entities. Okay? So your whole argument about, us sending people to CCOT and so on and so forth is really a moot point. And I guess to kind of land this plane, my issue with you on your stance about this is the fact that you neglect to inform your audience of the fact that this has already taken place. Trump's not doing anything outside the realm of what's already occurring.
Well, I disagree
now,
with
the
that.
Difference is,
I disagree with everything you just said.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
and let me finish this real quick.
Sure.
But the difference is the fact that this institution is not actually located within the United States. But there's already policies, there's already organizations that are in place that go around and accreditate all of the federal and state and local institutions that we use here in the United States, whether it be private or public ran, right? And there's no difference in them doing the same thing in CCOT. And I'll go ahead and step aside and let you finish. I
Yeah.
apologize.
No,
Thank you.
no, no. I appreciate you saying that. I want to be clear about what my issue is. Like, I have a separate issue with the private prison industry. Like, I have a separate issue that doesn't tie into my complaints at all with what Trump is doing with CCOT. So I want to be clear about something. My criticism of Trump and what's going on with CCOT doesn't have anything to do with the ownership structure of the prisons. Do you understand that when I say that?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So it's not the fact that these are privately owned prisons. It's not the fact that someone is profiting off of those prisons. Now that's a separate issue. I want to say that's a separate issue. I think even you recognize
I
that.
agree.
Yeah.
And you and I probably align with that, my friend.
Yeah. So my issue is the denial of due process on the one hand, the extraterritorial deportation, which is a deprivation under U.S. law, which is without due process. So one is the denial of due process. The other is the substantive infliction of harm, which deserves due process. That is the deportation. That is like a rendition. It's a legal deportation for which due process applies. And then the kind of gamesmanship that the administration is playing vis-a-vis who has ultimate jurisdiction over those prisoners. So with a private prison in the United States, no one questions, right, that they're acting as an agent of the state and they're acting as an agent of the federal government, and they're, housing these prisoners, feeding them and keeping them at the direction and control of the state. What the Trump administration was doing was, in addition to denying these people due process, was disclaiming that they had any control over them, which now has been utterly rebuked by the fact that Kilmar was brought back, number one, and then also by the statements of El Salvador to the UN and other agencies saying that we're just doing this at the behest of the United States government. We're getting paid for it, right? So the problem there wasn't, strictly speaking, the fact that and it's not privately owned, right? Like, this is the government of El Salvador. So I want to be clear, it's not even privately owned. So my issue with it can't be private ownership because it's not privately owned, right? It's owned by the government of El Salvador. So I want to repeat now for the third time, my issue with what's going on in Secot isn't that it's privately owned because A, it's not privately owned, and B, because that, like you said, like it happens in the country and no one like yells the way I was yelling about Kilmar Garcia. The problem was all the other stuff, the denial of due process, the illegal rendition, and then ultimately the lying about who ultimately has control and jurisdiction over these inmates and pretending that the government didn't have that control as a way to evade the responsibilities to follow court orders. That was the issue, not at all having to do with the private prison industry. I thought it was a good point that you raised, Tiny, to be honest with you, because it further what I think was my point, which is, in reality, these aren't prisoners being held under the authority of the El Salvadoran government. It's the El Salvadoran government acting at the direction and in effect serving as a contractor to the United States government, not too dissimilar to how a private prison would operate. So I thought that connection was very interesting. I thought it was a good point, but ultimately my problem with it doesn't sort of ground down to that basis. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. So, and I don't mean to. I'm not dumbing down your argument because you bring up some valid points there, and there's. I'll be honest with you, I'm not an attorney, right? So, I can tell you that I do believe that they have received due process, because due process is not what we believe it to be. And in the sense of due process just means that they've received the processes that are entitled to them by the courts, right? And to my understanding, and I'm sure you could probably find specific cases in which this didn't take place, and if that's the case, I will stand right now and say I do not agree with that. But these individuals are receiving the proper due process in which an illegal should receive in the United States of America. They are being seen before immigration officials. Their status is being determined, at which point they are being deported from the United States, which is their due process. Now, again, I can't, and I will concede, I cannot get into the legal argument. So that's just my stance on it. I'm not necessarily arguing you. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I think that you're, I understand what you're saying. I don't think it's right though, because
right.
like if you
and that's fair.
if you consider
and that's fair. Go ahead.
What I was going to say is, if you consider the Supreme Court of the United States, and listen, I have my own problems with the Supreme Court. You can disagree with the Supreme Court of the United States, but if there are any indication of what due process is, I'll first ask you. I'll tell you from a legal perspective what I think that the case law says, and then I'll ask you just from as like a fundamental fairness point, just like in your heart of hearts. So first, I'll let you know.
Okay, well, hold on before we go into like the legal stuff, man, because you're going to drag me into weeds on stuff that I can't. I honestly, if I sat here and tried to argue with you, I would just sound like a fool. Sorry for cursing.
If due process and what processes do is a matter, it's like a legal issue, right? Like, then why would you have a position on it?
Because I'm an American citizen, and I might not be a classically trained attorney, but I'm not retarded either. And I do understand that due process is different depending upon your immigration status, for instance, okay? Due process changes if you're a minor compared to an adult, right? Are we in agreement on those things?
It is a flexible concept that the court has described.
Exactly. That's it.
I just want to say,
it's a flexible concept. It's a flexible. So I'm not incorrect on that, am I?
No, you're not incorrect on the notion that due process isn't not every kind of deprivation is subject to the same kind of procedures that you would get if you were indicted criminally, right? If you're indicted criminally,
Very correct.
It's like maximal protections. You have to get unanimous jury. It needs to be at
least if you're an American citizen.
Well, if you're an American citizen, that applies to every person.
Yes.
In this country.
If you're an illegal in the United States of America, the due process that's afforded to you is not the same as somebody has been.
It is for criminal indictment. It is.
In criminal court, yes. I apologize, yes, you're right. I apologize. I misunderstood.
No. There's some question here, right? Like, because citizens themselves, by definition, can't be subject to removal procedures. Although Trump has said he wanted to do that, right? Like, the removal procedures, we don't have banishment in this country anymore. Right, like, or ever, right? We never had banishment. Right. That's like an old style thing. So by definition, we can't compare. Well, what kind of procedures do citizens get for removal proceedings? Because by definition, citizens aren't subject to removal proceedings. So it's hard to do a one-for-one comparison. It's kind of like you look at the deprivation and you look at what is kind of required under the due process clause. And I'll agree with you that it's a flexible concept in the sense that there's case law that suggests not every deprivation has the same amount of due process applied to it. So, for example, if you're denied welfare, or if you're denied Social Security benefits, or if they take away your Social Security benefits, maybe you don't get the same amount of process as if they try to take away your law license, or if they try to take away your liquor license. And maybe a step above that would be if they try to sue you in court. Maybe the due process you get from a lawsuit perspective is higher than you would from a denial of a license perspective. And so there's this, I think the case is called Matthews v. Eldridge, or the Eldridge balancing is what it's known as. And the Supreme Court has basically said it is a flexible concept, but and that's one of the things that they're going to have to work out with respect to people who are subject to deportation. But the steady precedent of the court has been that removal procedures for people in this country, that there is a base level of due process here. And even for people who are here without status. So like at the point of entry into the border, when you're trying to get into this country, you have no procedural due process rights, okay? So an alien, that's how the statute defines it, alien, trying to get into this country doesn't really have, unless they're a green card holder, but even then, right, less, a procedural due process rights the same as someone without status in the country who's in the deportation kind of phase of it. So, but when you're in the country, the precedent, and this is over 100 years, has been you get some procedural due process. Now, there's some question. How much is due to you? In the context of the Alien Enemies Act deportations that we were talking about, the Supreme Court answered, like, you need to give these people a right to file a habeas petition. And that is like a right to go to court and literally go in court and argue whether you're an alien enemy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so the court has said for a lot of these Alien Enemies Act deportations, you have to give them a real opportunity to go seek a court, to go to an Article III federal court to have review. And obviously, and I'll just ask you this, at least for the people who are being deported under the Alien Enemies Act, if they're picked up in the dead of night from where they are, like driven to the tarmac, not told in advance why they're being deported, not given any kind of indication they have a right to pursue this habeas petition in court, just be honest with yourself. Do you think that they were entitled to due process and that was denied to them when they were rendered to Sikat?
Were they brought before an immigration officer or an immigration judge?
Wait, hang on. So they weren't brought before an immigration judge. And that's
but an immigration officer determined that their status was that they were illegal in this nation, correct?
Some ICE guy said, you're an alien enemy, and then put him on a plane.
Right, but the law allows that ICE guy to be able to make that determination.
No, it doesn't.
Which stands up in a court of law. No. So therefore, see, here's the problem with this, okay? I understand that you don't agree with the fact that this is taking place. I understand that. And I understand that, hey, man, maybe it could be done a little bit differently. And maybe it could be done a little bit more officially. Maybe officially is the right word. I'm not quite sure what the word is I'm looking for here, but we'll go with officially, right? Where there's more proceedings and so on and so forth. I mean, would it make you feel better if they took 1,000 of them on that tarmac and put one immigration judge in front of them, and that immigration judge said, "Yep, you're all illegal because
no, it wouldn't.
The state justified."
Well, it would make me feel a little bit better if you had an immigration judge. The difference there would be, at a bare minimum, right? We have this pretend distinction between, it is a real distinction actually. The immigration judges are members of the Department of Justice as opposed to the Department of Homeland Security. And so at a bare minimum, if you had an immigration judge overseeing it on the tarmac, going through all these, it would be like an extra layer, but it wouldn't meet the minimum threshold that I would need, because a minimum threshold, I think, of due process for a major removal, like this is, it's not the criminal penalty, but it's something approaching the criminal penalty. It is something where there's a significant amount of room for error and risk of erroneous deprivation with serious injury. In those kinds of contexts, the bare minimum is notice and an opportunity to be heard. If you are being driven to the tarmac and there's an immigration judge right there who's pretty much rubber stamping all of these ICE determinations on the one hand, that's not a real opportunity to be heard. You don't have a chance to get a lawyer. You don't have a chance to make an argument really, because you're in a line, like the plane is running, right? So I'm sure in the example you're talking about, that would be better, but it wouldn't even be close to adequate. I'm saying give them 2 weeks at least, right, to talk to a lawyer and file a petition in court, which the Supreme Court said that they're allowed to do. But that's not what happened here, Tiny. What happened was they took all these people, they didn't give them a real opportunity to seek a lawyer and to file a petition. The only reason that any lawyer, like some lawyers caught wind that there was this thing being planned, and basically with pure luck filed these in advance, right, in DC, to have the case. But most of the people didn't have that opportunity. They didn't really have an opportunity to get a lawyer to make an argument that, hey, we're not alien enemies. And the truth is like apparent, right? Like they deported someone who did everything the right way, was going through the asylum process, was like a gay guy who has a real powerful.
No. Hold on real quick, because you really just destroyed your entire argument. Because why is Garcia back in the United States of America?
He's not one of the people that I mentioned.
No. Why is he back in the United States of America? Is it because his attorneys?
The official reason, or are you asking what are the real reason?
Is it because his attorneys argued? Is it because his attorneys argued while he was held in detention that he should not have been deported, and therefore the United States brought him back to the United States of America so that his case could be heard before judges in the United States of America?
That's not the. No,
so it sounds to me. Hold on a second. It sounds to me as if that actually did occur. Your problem is with the fact that they're deporting these people. Okay, I don't see that as being any different than if I get locked up for a DUI and they deport me from that location to 30 miles down the road to the jail, and they keep me there before I'm allowed to see a judge, before I'm allowed to contact an attorney.
No, it's different.
Before I'm allowed to plead my case. How is that any different?
I'll explain.
It's not different at all.
So
Okay, go ahead.
So I want to first explain, I wasn't talking about Kilmar. I was specifically talking about the alien enemies.
I know you weren't, but you're not talking about Kilmar, because Kilmar goes against your argument.
No.
That's why you're not talking about Kilmar.
No. The Kilmar case is even worse for you. I just want to say, like, Kilmar, I was being nice because I was referencing.
How is it worse for me? Homeboy got brought back to the United States because his attorneys argued in court.
I'll explain. So I just want to be clear. When I was referencing the Alien Enemies Act deportations, Kilmar was deported under no law. Like, it was just a purely lawless rendition, like with absolutely no even like purported basis for why he was.
I don't care what he was deported under. He was given these opportunities, this due process that you're speaking of, and was brought back to be tried on charges here in the United States.
So
that 100% shits on your argument, bro. You can try to talk out of it all you want. Yes, 100%. Why is that man back in the United States of America then? Why did anybody in the federal government bring him back if what you're saying if what you're saying is true? It doesn't make any sense, bro. You got to make sense to me, man.
Yeah,
Come on.
So first I'm going to contradict what you just said. I will address your broader point.
Okay.
You said he was brought back because his lawyer made these good arguments and compelled the government that he would actually been rendered illegally, and they brought him back because they were in compliance with the law. That's not why they brought him back. The official reason why they brought him back by the government is to charge him with a crime. That's the reason that the government gives. So you're just wrong when you say the reason they brought them back is because they made this compelling argument, and so this is the law proceeding as it should. That's not what happened. The reason they brought him back, according to the government, is because they wanted to charge this person with a series of crimes. And we can have a lot of questions about that and why they did that. That doesn't even matter, right? Like, at the point, linear time is your problem here. Your problem is linear time. You get due process before a deprivation, right? So if you get deprived by the government and you don't get due process before that, there's been a denial of due process. Regardless if afterwards the government tries to make amends or to make it right, that doesn't change from the fact that at the time that they deprived you of something, you were denied due process. So even if it were the case, right, that they brought every single person back because they realized what they were doing was illegal, it wouldn't change even 1%. The conclusion that I made, that at the time that they were rendered illegally, deported illegally, that they were denied due process. You understand that? It doesn't matter if afterwards they rectify it. It would not detract from the point that at the time that the deprivation was inflicted on these people, they were subject to a deprivation without due process. You understand that point? That's linear time.
Yeah, I understand that completely and totally. But again, I do not believe that his due process was violated in any way, shape, or form.
Right. So you can't get around it by saying
more due process.
Yeah. You can't get around the due process issue by saying, well, he was brought back. You can't get around that issue by saying he was brought back. That's why I'm addressing it.
Okay, so I have a question. I have a question for you.
Yeah.
What remedies does an American citizen have when I'm arrested on the street and my due process of rights are violated, or any of my amendment rights are violated? What's my recourse of action at that point?
Well, there's another.
I file a civil suit against the United States government. So he's more than welcome to file a civil suit against the United States government, and if his argument stands, the government will pay him. But beyond that, my friend, your argument of his due process, blah, 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 guess what, man? There's hundreds of thousands of American citizens every day that are arrested by this government that their due process rights are violated. So every one of their amendment rights are violated. Okay? And you know that as well as I do. And to stand here and act as if this man has not been afforded the same opportunities that an American citizen has is disingenuous. Now, I will agree his due process rights are not the same of an American citizen. Not anywhere close. Not anywhere close.
Okay.
Right?
I'm hearing two
things.
He's
been given additional considerations because of the spotlight that's been put on him. I will concede that. And I think that's wrong. To be quite honest with you, if I was the Trump administration, I'd have said, hey, look, if somebody wants to try him in the United States, they can over video communications. The same way that they hold United States prisoners locked up in jails and allow them to see judges. So I have no qualms with them deporting this cat. And I have no qualms with what's taking place. Because, again, I've been arrested before, and to be honest with you, this cat has been given kid gloves compared to the shit that's taking place to dudes that I know, man. So your argument just doesn't hold water, bro. So it just doesn't hold water.
I'm hearing two things. So the first thing I'm hearing is, well, who cares because there's other deprivations in the country. So if there's a deprivation, what does it matter?
That's not it. That's not it. I'm pointing out the fact that there is other deprivations in the company.
Okay,
in the country.
I don't deny that. My
and
argument
pointing out the fact that the recourse is through civil action, through litigation against the United States government.
Let me lay out what I'm hearing.
However much you're allowed.
Let me lay out what I'm hearing. I'm hearing number one is, well, there's all this other stuff. You know, it's not even as bad as what happens to other people. First of all, I might fight. Fight on that on the merits.
I just cleared that up, man. I just cleared that up, and I said the only reason why I brought that up is because of the fact that the only recourse that you have is by filing a lawsuit against the government.
So
we can sit here and talk about that all day long, but his legal recourse is filing a lawsuit against the government.
So
he already
has. He already has. First of all,
okay, good. And if that has any merit, then it'll proceed on its merit, and I'm cool with that.
So second of all,
listen, man, if the government him, let the man catch a paycheck, but he can catch that motherfucker outside the country.
Here's the problem: just because there's a due process violation doesn't mean that there's a remedy. Okay, I want to repeat that one more time. Just because there's a due process violation does not mean that there's a remedy. There are doctrines of absolute and qualified immunity in the civil damages frameworks. There's doctrines of sovereign immunity that prevent you from suing the government except in limited cases. And for example,
I get it.
If the cops come and try to search your car without a warrant, oftentimes they can be protected with the doctrine of qualified immunity. And the only recourse you would have is if they decided to bring a charge against you, you would be able to try to exclude that evidence using the exclusionary rule and say this was the search was unconstitutional. But just because there's an unconstitutional search
real quick,
doesn't mean there's a remedy.
What happens prior to that point? Are you incarcerated? Are you not deported from the location in which you were arrested, regardless of the fact that the cop went in and searched your vehicle without consent?
So if they
didn't have a dog that alerted on it, they just decided, I'm gonna search his car, and they did so. What happens? You get locked up.
So if they detain you,
you go to jail, and then what's your remedy to that situation? Can you go to the jailer and say, Mr. Jailer, let me out because that cop violated my rights?
Yeah. So
does that take place?
So there's what's called oftentimes a preliminary hearing, and there are other content. If you really wanted to, you could get a habeas petition where you could test the legality of your incarceration because the government lacks probable cause to arrest you. So there are ways that you can sue the government or seek a remedy or actually go before the judge in your case in a preliminary hearing to contest the legality of your arrest under the constitutional standards or applicable state standards. So in the meantime, the criminal case has already been adjudicated on. No.
So what recourse? Yes, come on, dog, get out of here.
What do you mean?
You're going to tell me that you're going to be able to go through all these type of civil litigation, all these type of civil actions to try to get you out of jail over an amendment violation prior to the civil case or the criminal case being adjudicated upon?
The preliminary,
that's wild.
The preliminary hearing.
That's wild. Come on. The preliminary hearing is bullshit, and you know it. When you go up in a preliminary hearing, they don't give two fucks unless you can come out with just some straight up wild shit. Like you got on video that this cop did what he did. Your ass is still staying where you're staying, man. And you know that. Come on, bro. You can blow that smoke up somebody else's ass, man, but you can't blow that up mine. And you know better than that. Come on.
I don't know what you think I'm blowing. I'm just telling you the truth, which is you can contest the legality of your detention.
Yes, you can contest it. How long does it take? How long does it take?
So the preliminary hearing happens early on in the procedures before that there's a trial. So
I know when the preliminary takes place. It's the very first one.
Yeah, it depends on the exact jurisdiction. I don't want to claim to speak for every single jurisdiction.
Understand.
When a preliminary hearing happens,
yeah.
Okay? So that's the only reason why I'm hesitant there. And I agree with you that the standard for keeping you incarcerated is not super high. It's probable cause, okay? Probable cause, it's something, but it's not a lot. It's maybe 30%, 30, 20%, something like that. So it's a low standard. Probable cause is not a super exacting standard, right? To convict you is beyond a reasonable doubt, but probable cause is much lower than that, okay? So I don't know why you're mad at me. I'm not lying that the standard is low. I'm fully transparent that the standard for incarcerating you is low. Here's the difference, right?
Because no, hold on. Let me answer that real quick, and I'll concede back. I'll pass back over to you, man. The reason why I'm upset about this is because you're trying to put out that you're going to be able to file all these, for these amendment violations and this, that, and the third, and that's going to get you out of jail. That's not going to take place, and you know that, bro.
Wait, no.
When
did I say or imply that all these different people are going to be able to file these petitions to get out of jail in the normal course?
That's what your whole argument was, is that even though you get arrested and that there's violations of your rights, that you can file these and that can absolve you being incarcerated. That can remove you from being incarcerated.
I'm saying you have the opportunity. You can, right? You
can. You have the opportunity, but in the real world, dude, you know that doesn't take place. That's what I'm saying. And you know that.
What do you mean that doesn't take place?
I tell you what, man, you cited case law earlier. Go through your law book and find me a single case in which an individual that was locked up and it was later found that their rights were violated by law enforcement when they were incarcerated.
It happens. As I said,
come on, man.
No, it happens that people get released because they determine that there's not probable cause.
Because they have high-powered attorneys, man.
Not always. Sometimes it's just a public defender.
Get out of here, dog.
I want to say, people overestimate like big law attorneys. Like oftentimes, I think the better attorneys are people who are public defenders, people who are working for these NGOs. I think oftentimes these high-powered attorneys.
Ridiculous.
Not all of them. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. I just want to. This is not related to what you're saying. I'm saying
90% of criminal court cases are settled in the hallway outside of the courtroom, and you know that.
I don't know what that is. All I'm saying is that as a matter of course, there are really good attorneys who are, either they're high paying or sometimes they're not high paying, who are able to get people released at these different junctures. Not all the time, because guess what? I actually believe that most of the time the police have the right guy. Like, I don't know about you, but like most of the time the police do have the right guy. Now, not nearly close to all the time, right? I'm not saying that there's not a huge amount of people where they get the wrong guy, right? They oftentimes do get the wrong guy. Okay?
No, we're in agreement. We're in agreement.
Yeah. So typically, I would probably agree. On average, someone who's arrested is going to be unsuccessful in their attempts to prevent themselves from being detained because number one, usually they're probably guilty, and number two, the standard is low. The standard is probable cause. I'm just saying it does happen, and they do have that opportunity to be heard. And that notice, they get before a judge they're supposed to, right? But within 48 hours. That doesn't always happen, but that's what it's supposed to happen, right? That's not at all like what's going on with these people who are being deported without any, they don't even get a piece of paper saying why you're being deported, right? They were just thrown into a tarmac.
Entitled. They're not entitled to. No, they're not.
The Supreme Court says they're not entitled. Why did the Supreme Court say it? Why did the Supreme Court say that?
Then why is the Supreme Court allowing the deportations to continue?
They're not.
They're not.
Yeah.
They didn't just rule on him being able to deport people to third party countries.
That has to.
They didn't just rule on that.
So that has to do with a specific. It's called the universal injunction. Do you remember this universal injunction issue? That's been percolating.
Bro, but here's the problem with that. You can't tell me that the base argument is invalid, but that they're giving provisions and cutouts to it. You can't tell me that.
The Supreme Court issued an opinion without any reasoning, but basically everyone's kind of acknowledged that the reason is that there's a universal injunction that was issued by the district court, and the Supreme Court just had a ruling that said that is illegal under the Judiciary Act of 1789. And that's why everyone was talking about universal injunctions. So the reason why that injunction was stopped doesn't necessarily have to do because, it was legal to deport these people to a third country under those conditions, but it has to do with the fact that the universal injunctions are not allowed by the courts to do. So it's a different issue.
All right, so maybe I'm missing your argument here, right? So I'm going to break this down into knuckle dragger speak, right? So when I tell my kid, hey, you can't go outside, right? Because for whatever reason, you can't go outside. I can't later go back and say, well, on Tuesdays you can do it, but every other day you can't. That doesn't make any sense because I just violated my base argument. My base stance was, you can't do this, right? So if the Supreme Court has ruled against Donald Trump deporting these people, why is it that there's a special provision to that in which they said, oh, no, that's okay? That doesn't make sense to me, man.
The Supreme Court issued a ruling that said all people who are to be removed are entitled to procedural due process under the Constitution. And they further said that if they're, I'm talking about a specific subset here of the Alien Enemies Act deportations. We can get to the third country removals as well, but I just wanted to get you on one that you acknowledge that there's at least one case in which there was a denial of due process. You haven't said that yet, but in the case of
bro, I'll admit to you that I'm certain that with the numbers that are going out, there is going to be mistakes that are made, man.
Not mistakes.
Just like in the American
this is malicious.
justice.
It's malicious. I mean,
it's just as malicious as locking up an American citizen who doesn't deserve to be locked up. It's just as malicious, and they're given an opportunity to be able to plead their case at some point. It may not be here on U.S. soil, right? Because you guys are bitching about alligator Alcatraz. That seems like a great holding spot for me for people to be able to plead their case. But what do you guys do? You bitch about it. You bitch about it.
Should the conditions?
You bitch about the conditions.
Do you think the conditions
let me tell you about the conditions. I'll tell you what. You call Glenn Ivey up, and me and Glenn Ivey should go walk through the PG County Adult Detention Center, where he was county commissioner before he became a federal senator or whatever the he is, representative, senator. He's a Congress. How about the three of us go walk through the PG County Adult Detention Center in Prince George's County, Maryland, where he comes from, where he rose from power from, and we look at the conditions compared to alligator Alcatraz to what American citizens are being held in. Come on, man, you're blowing smoke up the wrong people's asses, bro. I'm telling you right now. You can't sit here and tell me. I've seen inside. Do you know that there's actually inmates that have smuggled cell phones in that are releasing TikTok videos of the conditions inside?
Yeah, it's deplorable.
Have you seen the plates of food? Oh, get the f out, bro. Have you seen the plates of food these cats are receiving?
Wait. So in general, the prison conditions in this country are not good.
Oh my God.
Okay.
Don't deflect. Don't deflect.
Wait,
these cats are receiving a much better situation than American citizens are.
I'm going to call you on that. In what way am I deflecting?
You're deflecting because you're talking about, oh, well, you know, I understand the parent of the citizen of the jails, blah, blah, blah. Nah, bro, f that. We're talking about the conditions that these people are receiving in comparison to American citizens.
First of all, I have made no claim about alligator Alcatraz. You have to deal with that. Like, we're talking about something.
No, you need to bring up the conditions, and I cut you off. I should have let you run on with it.
You cut me off because I was going to give some generic statement. I was going to say the conditions in U.S. prisons are.
Yeah, you were going to give the DNC line. That's what you were going to do. The Democrat line.
Bro.
Okay.
You need to chill, okay? So what I was gonna say, do you want to hear what I was gonna say or not?
Good.
I mean,
no, go ahead, please, please continue, please.
So what I was gonna say is the same thing I said before is like your argument seems to be ground down to, even if I granted, which I don't, that the conditions in alligator Alcatraz are significantly better on average than U.S. prisons. If I granted that, which I don't, it seems like you're saying it would be acceptable to have deplorable conditions as long as there are other more deplorable conditions elsewhere. And I just don't know why that follows.
Absolutely not. I never once said that.
That seemed to be what you were getting at.
That's not true. No, you listen, man. You can ad lib all you'd like, but that's not true at all.
Well, you said in the due process. You're like, who cares about this? You were like, who cares about this because other people are denied due process. So it seems like a common theme is like other people comparing like how bad they have it, and that seems to be like one of your MOs here.
Yeah, because you want to compare their due process to an American citizen's due process, that's not correct.
No, I'm
so what I'm trying to explain to you is that American citizens are literally not even getting the same treatment as these folks are getting. Okay, you can say all that sideways shit you want, bro, but guess what? Slop is fed to American prisoners every single day. Every day. Yeah, and I've seen it from both sides. I've seen it from both sides.
Just because you say it doesn't make it true. I mean, get
the fuck out of here, man. So now you're going to tell me that the conditions inside of as a liberal, you're going to tell me the conditions inside of American institutions are great and that these inmates aren't being fed.
Tiny, come on.
That's your position.
Tiny,
that's your position.
Tiny, you spurred out because I started my entire thing.
Wait, that's your position.
Let me talk. So I started my entire diatribe there. I started my entire diatribe there by saying, hey, the conditions in American prisons are awful. And you cut me off. You're like, bro, stop blowing smoke up my ass. Like, you cut me off when I was saying the direct opposite of what you're now claiming my position would be, is that the conditions in American prisons are great. Those are your words that you are attributing to me now, the position that the conditions in American prisons are great, or jails are great, when I started my entire diatribe, which you interrupted by saying that they're bad. I just don't think you're listening to what I'm saying. or you're just like,
I'm listening, bro.
Okay. So
I'm listening. Go ahead.
The fact that we're even talking about alligator Alcatraz, this is a meta point. The fact that we're even talking about alligator Alcatraz right now should show you that something has gone wrong in this conversation. Why are we talking about alligator Alcatraz?
It's not. No, it's not. We're talking about alligator Alcatraz because you talked about the fact that these people should be afforded the opportunity to go before an immigration judge. And so, you know what? It seems like alligator Alcatraz is a great holding place where we can set up immigration judges. And I believe the Trump administration has done so that these people could be adjudicated under whatever conditions you believe their due process standards may be, right? Whatever that may be. Let's say you decide XYZ, whatever, I don't care, okay? This is an opportunity for this to take place, but what do? You guys attack it. Instead of embracing this as saying like, hey, listen, you know what? This is a good spot. We can even put families together. We can keep them there. Dude, I'm telling you right now, if you haven't seen the pictures of the food that these people are being fed, I would purchase what these cats are being fed out of a restaurant, man. Okay? I'm telling you straight up. I'm not bullshitting you. All right?
Yeah.
So unless the pictures that I've seen...
So I don't think you're really tracking. Like, I'm saying the alligator Alcatraz issue has nothing to do with what I'm talking about with illegal deportations. Because you're granted...
It does, because you are arguing the fact that they should be given an opportunity to be held in the United States of America rather than being sent to CCOT. And then having their case heard in America, right? I mean, this has been the left point for a long time, that it's unfair for him to be able or to be held in a foreign country and have to have his case adjudicated here in the United States. Am I incorrect on that?
I think that that it's unfair for them to deny due process. But you haven't even granted it.
Okay,
whoa.
Well, hold on. Wait,
no. I just want to be clear. We haven't finished that conversation about denial of due process because you disagree. I want to finish that conversation. It seems like you want to go past it.
All right, let's go ahead and rewind back to the denial of due process. Because again, like I told you from the beginning, I cannot sit here and argue with you the differences, but there are differences. And you've conceded that there's differences between somebody who is a legal U.S. citizen or has legal status in the United States and somebody that is an illegal alien to the United States.
I have not said that. I said that the kind of deprivation at issue with illegal immigrants that is removal, that just isn't applicable to citizens. And so I don't know. Like, you can't really make a comparison between the procedural due process entitled to U.S. citizens versus on removal proceeding, because, of course, U.S. citizens aren't eligible for banishment. And so because they're not eligible for banishment legally, how can I say, in removal matters, they get more due process?
That's not the argument, man. That's not the argument. The argument is, do illegal aliens have the same due process rights as American citizens? They do
with respect,
not.
Sorry. Due process is...
They do not.
Tiny. Due process is with respect to something, right? So due process isn't just a self-standing concept, right? You have due process with respect to a criminal charge. You have due process with respect to a denial of benefits. You have due process with respect to, eminent domain. You have due process. So there's no like freestanding due process concept that it's just like illegal immigrants have less. So you need to be specific on like, on what things, on what kinds of deprivations do non-citizens have less rights than American citizens? That's the question. You can't just say less due process because not citizen. You need to be specific.
You've already answered that. You've already answered that. American citizens don't face banishment. Illegals do.
Right, but that's not a procedural due process issue. That's a substantive right issue, right? Like
but your argument doesn't make any sense. How can I compare the due process rights of somebody that cannot be deported from the country?
That's the point. The conclusion is you can't.
You just said banishment is illegal in the United States.
What I'm saying is you can't, right? Like you can't compare them because one group of people is not subject to that.
So why are you trying to compare them?
No, you're trying to compare them, sir.
No, not either. I've said from the beginning that the due process rights of illegals are not the same as Americans. With respect
to what? With respect to
they
what?
They are not comparable. To banishment from the country, bro. Okay. You said it yourself.
All right, tiny. I'm going to try to explain it. So on one side of the ledger, you have procedural rights. Okay, these are procedural guards. It means your right to contest something, your right to have notice. That's procedural. On the other side, I'll put substantive, right? The U.S. citizens have a substantive right to be in the country. Illegal immigrants don't. Any non-citizen doesn't have a substantive right to stay in this country. But we don't know what the procedural rights are of citizens in deportation proceedings because they aren't subject substantively to deportation proceedings. You can't say that with respect to removal proceedings, citizens have more procedural rights than non-citizens because we never will have occasion to rule on the banishment of a U.S. citizen again, unless Trump tries to do that, right? So it's not
And conversely, you can't say that their due process rights are being violated because you have no basis, you have no flat line, you have no ground in which you can judge that upon.
I can.
Other than what has been afforded to them by the immigration process. That is what is taking place.
So the Supreme Court said, with respect to one subset, right, with the Alien Enemies Act deportations, that they are entitled to notice and an opportunity to be heard with respect to a habeas petition filed in a federal court to contest their removal. That's what the Supreme Court said, right. 9-0 on that.
Did the Supreme Court list at what location they should be held?
No, they did not say at what location they should be held.
Oh, so in other words, they can be held at CCOT and still be given that opportunity.
No. That's correct. No. The Supreme Court.
How is it not? The Supreme Court didn't rule on the location in which they could be detained.
Have you, Tiny? This is now you're going into troubled waters because I want.
I'm not going into troubled waters.
I want honesty from you. Like, you haven't read these opinions, so why are you claiming to know what the Supreme Court said?
I've never claimed to be an attorney, bro, but I just asked you a specific question. You said
the Supreme Court said it would be okay for them to go to CCOT to have this adjudicated, and that's flatly rejected.
Did the Supreme Court say that that's how so?
Because deportation, right, is a deprivation, they're entitled to process before that happens. You get me? So you don't get to deprive them and say, well, these are the procedures for the deprivation. The deprivation already occurred. Obviously, due process applies before the deprivation. You get me?
Okay. So I have a question for you then, all right? So does the United States own territory or property in other nations, like embassies, for example? Is that not considered sovereign U.S. territory?
I don't know why I'm asking. So I will answer that question, but I'm playing 20 questions now, and we're like moving.
No. I promise you, after you answer that question, I'm going to tie it right into where we're going.
If what you mean by does the United States have property that they own things outside of the country, the answer is yes. If you mean, own in the sense of they exercise sovereign jurisdiction over those places, it's less clear.
Well, a U.S. embassy colloquially, excuse me, man, I can't speak. Colloquially, I'm not even going to try to say the word. You know what I'm saying?
Colloquially.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Man, I'm sorry, man.
You're good.
I appreciate that. Thank you for the save. But we acknowledge the fact that a U.S. embassy territory is that's sovereign U.S. property, right?
I don't know what you mean by sovereign property. That's the sovereign land of some other country.
Meaning that if you attack us, if you attack a U.S. embassy, it's considered you're attacking the United States homeland.
I don't know if that's true.
Right. But, okay, well, maybe it doesn't even make a difference, okay? Where I'm going with this is there is absolutely nothing that says, and I'm not saying that they have or they have not, and maybe this would alleviate the entire problem. There's nothing that says that the United States cannot go in and say C wing of CCOT, that's too many C's. How about D wing of CCOT is now considered a U.S. territory, and the inmates that go there will only go there that are deportation hearing inmates, ones that are going through their due processes. And they'll be held there on U.S. property inside of that institution.
Yeah, you have some problems there. Number one is it's a different country, and El Salvador has not granted the United States sovereign control over.
Do we have an embassy there? Do we have an embassy there?
Yeah. Again, I think you're
confused. So how would it be any different though?
Yeah, because I think even under an embassy, that's not considered the territory of the United States, right? Like we don't have our territory doesn't extend to every single country of the 200 plus countries where we have embassies.
Understand, but our laws govern what takes place within inside of that area,
within
right?
Somewhat.
Within inside of the embassy territory, the embassy land.
That's at the grace of the host country, and so ultimate sovereign control over that land. That land doesn't belong to the United States.
So El Salvador
from a sovereign perspective.
So then El Salvador comes to an agreement with the United States and says that, hey, we're going to give you D wing of this institution, GPS coordinates, blah 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 blah, whatever. That area is now your area. You do with it as you please inside of this institution.
Yeah,
fortunately, we've already built cells.
The problem is it's not just a procedural issue. El Salvador is sovereign over that part of the country, and that at no point have they or would they have ceded that land to the United States in the sovereign sense of it. Now they're kind of leasing it.
Why not?
They haven't. What do you mean, why not?
Exactly. We're already leasing it from them.
No, but that's,
we're already leasing it.
All right. So
you said it yourself. Why not come to a 10-year agreement that says, hey, we'll let you have this land for 10 years?
No, so
they have not. You're right. But if they did, but see, what I'm saying is that there are ways around everything that you're saying here, man. And I understand that you guys take the position that these folks should be treated with kitty gloves, okay? But unfortunately, that's not going to help this country right now. And I understand that we're not going to come to an agreement necessarily on what we need to do to make this country improve, at least not on this subject, right? So maybe it's best if we just kind of move on and let's move on to what the initial question you put.
We will, but I want to be clear about something. Ultimate sovereign control over our land under the laws of the United States, right? Like the Constitution, right? It's not clear to me that embassies are considered territories of the United States. I think that's not true. And the ultimate
and territories might not be the right word.
Ultimate sovereign control over those embassies resides in the states, and no one considers, for example, the embassy of the United States it's just these little holes and dots where ultimate sovereign control resides in the state who's hosting it, right? They could, if they wanted to, expel everyone there. And
correct.
If they were like, there's not just this loophole around deportations where you could just send people to embassies and get around all the laws of deportation.
Why not?
Because it doesn't exist. Because that is still considered a deportation. You're sending them to the territory of another country.
That's not true, though. If you're sending them to an area that country has ceded to the United States, wherever be the terms, I don't disagree with you on the fact that we could come to an agreement with El Salvador, and El Salvador says, hey, we're going to give you D-Wing, right? And maybe 3 years from now, they say, hey, we don't like you anymore, get the out. And now we got to pack them all up and bring them back to America. Yeah, I agree. 100%. 100%.
So, I mean, it would be nice if you have some citation to case law of the United States, if it wanted to, could get around.
Doug, you know I'm not an attorney.
So can you at least admit that you're talking out of your ass when it comes to like any kind of legal citation for what you're talking about? What you're talking about is like pure just conjecture.
I never once brought up any legal citation. The problem is now you want to turn this. Hold on a second. You want to turn this into a legal argument when you knew coming into this I'm not an attorney. I never claimed to be.
So you're saying, for example, you're saying they could do this. When you say they could do this, is it just like your opinion that it would be nice if they did it?
No, it is of my opinion that they could do this. You have yet to present one argument as to why they could not.
When you say, first of all, I don't even know if we define what this is, but when you say they could do this, you're talking about, let me finish, you're talking about they legally could do it, right? You're saying that they could legally do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Why not? Until the Supreme Court comes back and says they can't do it, why not? There's no legal precedent that says they can't.
Hang on a second. So is it your opinion that unless the Supreme Court has ruled on a matter, that you don't know if it's legal or not?
I mean, if you're following the letter of the law, yes.
Okay, so like if I enslave you, Now, I'm not sure that we have a direct precedent like for the exact circumstance in which I would enslave you. But you think that
false imprisonment is against the law. False imprisonment is against the law.
Let's so
yes.
put aside is against the law. Put aside the state issues. Put aside the other crimes that could be entailed there. But
false imprisonment, I believe, on the federal level is against the law.
You're dodging the hypothetical. You understand that?
I'm not dodging it, dude. You are. False imprisonment is against the law.
So the question isn't
the
question isn't does it violate the laws of false imprisonment? The question is, would it violate the 13th Amendment to enslave you?
Dude, I'm not a legal scholar. I'm not going to sit here and argue with you whether or not it would violate the 13th Amendment. I can tell you right now, it violates case law. It violates laws on the book that I cannot enslave you. False imprisonment is already against the law. Kidnapping is already against the law. I cannot force you to go from one room to another. That's considered kidnapping. Now, if I take you across state lines, then I bring the feds in.
You just want to say I don't. You can say if you want. If you don't want to answer one of my questions, because I'll say this if I don't.
I just answered the question.
No, so
I just answered your question. If you don't want to answer the question, I'm not a legal scholar.
Yeah. So if you want to say I can't answer your question, I don't know if it would be illegal to enslave.
I literally just said I'm not a legal scholar. I can't argue the amendments with you, but there's already laws on the book in which enslaving somebody, imprisoning somebody against their will is illegal. So where are you even coming from with this? That's just silly to me.
I honestly think you don't even know.
Give me a little more background on where you're coming from with this question. Maybe I just don't understand.
So you're pushing this theory that like it would be acceptable, legal, constitutional for the government to do these kind of like loopholes around the due process requirements by just like sending people to embassies or kind of these kind of ambiguous pseudo areas, which are, even though they're in the territory of another country, like under the rules of international law, they're supposed to like operate similarly to the home country, right, in terms of their law and how they do stuff. And you're basically saying that it would be totally acceptable under both a procedural due process standpoint and also, I guess, substantively to send them there. I say, well, what's your like support for the notion? Like, what's your argument that that's acceptable? And you're like, well, the Supreme Court hasn't squarely ruled on this. First of all, I don't know how you would know that if you haven't done like a case review, if you haven't done like a research. But then I put like I put like a basic. I put like a basic. I haven't done the specific case search of what you're talking about either. But I just want to be clear.
Right, because you know that they haven't. But go ahead.
Well, no, they've said that deportations to other countries are instances where you have procedural due process rights, and I take and the government hasn't sent these people to embassies. I've never heard of the government deporting people specifically to embassies. The deportations are with respect to countries. That's where the deportation procedures happen. And people in immigration detention aren't housed in embassies. So what you're talking about, I would not be surprised if the Supreme Court hasn't held that specifically, just to be honest with you. But I want to go further, right? Like you made a point that it's like, well, the Supreme Court hasn't squarely dealt with the situation, and so how do you know it's illegal? And I gave you an example of like, well, I don't know that the Supreme Court has ever dealt post 13th Amendment with a case of like actual chattel slavery, as opposed to one of those more nuanced cases of like under Section 5 of the 13th Amendment, to have occasion to rule on whether or not an instance of chattel slavery was unconstitutional. Notwithstanding the fact that the Supreme Court may not have ruled on the merits of a chattel slavery situation, you wouldn't need the Supreme Court to have ruled on it for you to say it's illegal to enslave someone under the 13th Amendment. And so I asked you what I thought was like a basic question that we would get a common agreement on. Do you think it would be illegal under the 13th Amendment, putting aside issues of false imprisonment, whatever, for someone to enslave another person in the United States? And you were unwilling to answer that.
No, I'm 100% willing to answer that. I don't believe anybody should be enslaved in the United States. I don't think that should be the case at all.
I didn't ask if you think people should be enslaved. You understand? I didn't ask if you think they should be enslaved.
Yes, and you understand that I've told you, I don't know, probably like 10 times now that I'm not a legal scholar, dude. You can try to drag me into the weeds on a constitutional argument, but it's not going to work because I'm going to resist the entire way. I've told you multiple times now. I can't argue that, but I will ask you one question.
I'll answer your question, but you're making
I'll ask you one question. I'll ask you one question. When has the Supreme Court ever preemptively ruled on something?
I don't know what you mean by that question.
Meaning that the Supreme Court saw that there was an issue that may be coming before them, so they decided to take it upon themselves to rule upon it.
I think
When have they ever preemptively ruled upon a topic or a subject?
so. They have, and like they've. It's kind
Like
of
what?
shady. So they gave an advisory opinion about the legality. Why the fuck are you interrupting me? If you ask me a question, I'm going to give you an example. Okay, so the Supreme Court.
Because you're giving me bullshit examples, but go ahead.
How do you know it was a bullshit example? You didn't even hear it.
Go ahead, continue.
No,
Just
no,
continue.
We're going to stop real quick to be like.
They gave an advisory. They gave an advisory, which is not a ruling on a subject.
So what you're describing, the Supreme Court has held that it's unconstitutional to give advisory opinions, to like preempt a legal argument that's not before them. So you're asking when have
Correct. So in other words, somebody would have to commit an act, and then it would go before the Supreme Court. So there is no legal precedence that says that Trump cannot send somebody to somewhere that's deemed as an embassy, right? Let's just use that word, right? Because that's what everybody understands. So that Trump can't send somebody to an embassy outside of the United States because I believe we have a common agreement that is considered U.S. territory in some way, shape, or form. Right?
No,
now, the host country could say, get the f*** out.
I don't agree with that.
Okay.
I don't agree that every embassy is a U.S. territory. I don't agree with that.
I didn't say every, and I concede to the fact that at any point in time, the host nation can say, get the fuck out.
I do not agree that U.S. embassies are U.S. territory under U.S. law. U.S. territories are defined by statute. We have unincorporated territories. We have incorporated territories. We have, so like Guam, Puerto Rico, the American Samoa, a bunch of guano islands that are official territories of the United States. I do not agree that embassies, unless you can show me otherwise, are considered, quote, territory of the United States in the sense of the constitutional sense. That's I'm not conceding that.
And again, and maybe territory is the inappropriate word to use here, but you understand what my argument is, man. You understand that the United States government, if you attack, that is considered U.S. property, man. If you attack an embassy, you have committed an act of war against the United States
That's different.
Government. So the same thing could be done with that prison. They could give a wing of that prison to the United States government under the same authority that they do embassies.
You're making a legal argument right now. So you can't be a little bitch and say, I don't want to do legal, and you're making a legal argument right now.
Bro, I could twist anything to a legal argument. I could twist the fact that my kid sells bubble gum in his middle school class, and that's a violation of the law. I could twist anything to a legal argument. That's a bullshit. No, but that's solid.
So whenever I kind of push you a little bit, you're like, buddy. I'm telling you, I'm not making a legal argument, but you are literally making a legal argument.
Well then, hey, man, call me a jailhouse lawyer. I don't know what to tell you, bro.
Yeah, so
you can call it a legal argument if you'd like or not. Then shoot it down legally. Tell me how I'm incorrect legally, because
I'm trying, but you're making it very difficult. So, like, for example, one thing that you did was you said, well, until there's a case or controversy, the Supreme Court wouldn't have occasion to say that it's illegal. That's not necessarily true. Like, in the course of coming to a legal determination as to some other case or controversy, they could make a legal statement or have an exposition of legal principles that would apply to this situation.
But is that considered a ruling that the courts must abide by, or is that
yes? So if the
Supreme Court, is that just an advisory thing that they're giving them? Like, hey, maybe you should. This might be the direction in which you want to go with this. Be careful.
So even outside the context of an advisory opinion, first of all, there's a lot of debate about what an advisory opinion would be, and a lot of times there's disagreement about if the court is actually engaged in doing an advisory opinion. So, for example, the Supreme Court said that Korematsu was overturned in Trump versus Hawaii, and people argued about whether that's a dicta, whether that's an advisory opinion, shit like that. So I'm just, letting you know, sometimes there's a dispute over whether something is advisory or not, but there are statements of law that are holding on the actual parties that are directly relevant to the case before them, that notwithstanding the fact that they haven't dealt with, strictly speaking, the facts that you're bringing up, could have or should have and do have a bearing on like any hypothetical you're going to bring up. So it's not the case that just because we haven't been met with this facts that we don't have like applicable legal principles to apply. So for example, there's on point precedent that says, including in this administration, Trump 2.0, that before you send someone to another country, El Salvador, people are entitled to due process. And you're trying to be cute and be like, oh, well, is it technically El Salvador? No, it's El Salvador. It's El Salvador. And you don't have any case law.
No. Hold on a second. Hold on a second. You're conflating my argument. What I'm saying is that let's say you're 100% right. What I'm saying is that it's just a mere matter of a flick of a pen, and that's been absolved. and you've not rectified the situation in which you claim that you're so. Because El Salvador could come to the United States and say, listen, we are going to give you this portion of the prison. It is going to be considered a U.S. detention center. They could send U.S. Marshals down there or BOP officers, immigration officers, to even staff it.
Says who?
And it still would not.
We say they could do that. What do you mean by could?
They could. What says they cannot?
Wait.
Please give me a legal. No. Tell me the legal precedent that says they cannot.
You said they could do that.
Yes, they could.
What did you mean by that? No, I'm sorry. What did you mean when you said they could do that? I'm asking you what you meant by that statement.
I meant they could. At any point in time, that could be something that they do. Any point in time, the Trump administration could do that. El Salvador and the Trump administration.
So I want to be very clear with you. I don't understand the terms you're using. When you say they could do that, I don't understand if you mean that they could do it in essence, like they have the power to do it, or it's legally allowed for them to do it. So you need to explain to me what you mean by they could do that.
They could do it until it has been ruled upon that they cannot.
I don't know what you mean that they could do that. What do you mean by that?
I don't understand how to break down the word could. Like,
do you mean legally they could do it, or do you mean that practically they could do it? So what is your argument? What is your argument that they legally could do that?
And practically.
What do you mean?
My argument is there is no precedence against it. There is nothing that says until somebody challenges their actions. There is nothing that says that it cannot be done, man.
Hang on a second.
It's that simple.
So I'm going to offer you that's the principle that I was attacking before when I was giving you the slavery hypothetical is just because the Supreme Court hasn't dealt with these specific facts doesn't mean it's legal. Do you agree with that?
Yeah.
Okay. So the mere fact that we don't have this specific set of facts that you're referencing doesn't mean that what you're referencing would be legal.
So all right. So how about we attack it from this angle? Can you tell me where it says that it's illegal to detain somebody who has been deemed to have entered this country illegally by an immigration officer? Is there anything that says that they cannot do that? We'll go step by step, right? Because maybe we'll find our disconnect.
So you're asking me, is there something illegal about detaining people?
About an immigration officer detaining somebody, correct?
No.
Okay.
Not
all right. So
it could.
So we agree.
It depends on the facts. You agree? It could be illegal, couldn't it?
If the person is here illegally and an immigration officer detains them,
is it possible? Is it possible to detain someone under immigration authorities illegally? Yes or no?
I have no idea, man. I have no clue.
You actually don't. So I want to be clear about something. If an immigration officer picks anyone, that random person actually we'll say this based on their race and says, you over there, I see you're brown, you're going to immigration detention. Do you think that that's legal detention?
Is it legal for a U.S. police officer to stop you on the road because they believe that you've been involved in a crime?
Answer my question. I gave you an example.
Whoa,
stop
dodging. Let me tell you what.
I think it's disrespectful. Answer the question.
I'm explaining to you right now. Calling me a motherfucking bitch is the wrong thing to do, bro. I've been very civil with you.
I've been civil to you. You're dodging. You're dodging.
I'm not dodging.
Yes, you are.
You stupid liberal pussy motherfucker.
Hey. Chill.
I think this conversation is over at this point, motherfucker.
Wait. Are you going to be... really? You're going to cry out? Come on. You can't handle... I thought jokes were legal. I give you 2 hours of my time and you're going to call me a bitch? Because you're not answering the question. What, you're really going to pussy out about that? Come on. Are you seriously going to leave
pussy out about that, dog?
Wait, so because you can call me a bitch too. It's called America. Hello?
When the f did I call you a bitch? I came at you very civilly.
So first of all, so this is why I want to try to break down.
At no point in time if I come at you and attacked you in any type of way, shape, or form, man. We've kept this civil, at least I thought. And then you called me a bitch because you lost a motherfucking argument.
Bro, first of all, the bitch is playful.
I'll tell you what, man.
Listen,
we're going to go ahead and conclude this conversation at this point. I appreciate the opportunity.
Hey,
I appreciate the opportunity, but I'm not going to be talked to in that manner, my friend. Wait. That's not how this operates, my friend.
Let's break down.
All right.
Wait, hang on. Let's have a.
You have a wonderful day.
Wait, are you really going to leave, bro?
Jerry.
Oh, your shit's going off. Hello? Hello? Tiny? He left the call. Dude. Pussies. I thought jokes were legal. We didn't even get to talk about Russiagate. Did he accuse me of bitching before? Oh, wait, let's actually get the, when we do the edit for this, if he said bitching, we should, like, for sure put that in and then contrast it to what happened. What's there to say? What's there to say? That's wild. You're not going to blow smoke up my ass and tell me what... They can make jokes and you have to get them. Yeah, I know. It's just like so... It's so annoying to wrangle them on a single point. I didn't even bring them on to argue about immigration shit, but, you know, I'm not going to back down from a challenge on immigration stuff. They can say whatever the they want and talk over you and saying that, like, you're blowing smoke and, like, you're not addressing and you're conceding arguments when you're not conceding, or just, like, not listen to you, which he did multiple times. And then I say bitch one time. I just find it very hard to find, like, people to actually argue these cases.